During the pandemic, we laid off several staff. Now that things are opening up again, we're trying to rehire staff but are having a really tough time. Given we're only able to pay $10 to $12 an hour for many of these direct service positions, I worry we won't be able to find anyone. Do you have any creative suggestions about where we can find employees to add to our team? What we don't pay in money, we make up for in heart.
It's so tough when you're paying at the lower end of the scale, especially in today's day and age with all the unemployment stuff and what we've heard, right? And so you're not alone. But I guess if I were getting creative, I would look at things like, I'm not sure if these are part-time, full-time positions, but I always think that, students in colleges who are moving, who need maybe work, or maybe they're a part-time student and they still need to work and make a living is one idea. I think you could ask your current staff that you do have and maybe have some sort of incentive program. I don't know what that looks like, whether it's I'm assuming your budget's low. So maybe it's more of like hey, whatever, you get like, I don't know, a gift card to your favorite restaurant sort of thing. But like if you refer an employee, that we end up keeping long term, I think, and maybe just using your networks around you of people who know you, who believe in the work you do to see. I mean, people have, whether you're retired or whether you're sort of starting out, that's where my brain naturally goes, is thinking about people kind of both ends of that spectrum who potentially might be looking either for something meaningful in their life or just trying to make a few extra bucks.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I understand that it may be difficult to find employees for low wages, but if you can't find employees for what you're paying, like you're paying too low.
I know.
Like if you can really only afford $10 to $12, you need to think about your business model again a little bit, because that's you're competing with at $10 to $12, you're paying less than In-N-Out Burger, right? Who provides full health benefits. So even though there's heart involved, you can't buy food with heart. and these are employees. I mean, these aren't necessarily employees that are committed to doing this work regardless of what they're being paid. Because there are jobs, and we know that in the nonprofit sector, there are jobs, especially in the cultural sector, where people will work for peanuts because they just want to be involved with the work.
Yes.
They really want to be attached to it. But in reality, there aren't really that many of those people. They don't stick around for very long, and they go, you know what, this is really hard, and I could be making $15 if it was an In-N-Out Burger, right? So I think you need to think about your business model again. And also, the question, the way it was phrased, was hypothetical. Like, you haven't actually gone to the market. It sounds like you haven't gone to the market and actually figured out whether or not people are going to come and do the work that you're asking them to do for the amount of money you're asking to pay them. So maybe it's not a problem. Maybe the thing that they're doing is so cool and so much fun that $10 to $12 is actually fine. Or when you talk to employees and you find out that money is not enough, maybe there are other things that you can do to provide additional benefits to those employees that you haven't thought about yet. So you almost have to experiment a little bit. Maybe, especially in the $10 to $12 range, like maybe being paid once every 2 weeks is going to be bad. Maybe you can figure out a way to pay more frequently. Maybe you can share employees with other organizations so that you can say, especially if it's a part-time thing, maybe you can find another organization that's doing something similar to you and you guys can share a job. Or, I think you're going to have to be creative if you're going to try to get away with this. But I'd really look back at the business model and go, if we want to provide quality services, can we do it by paying a wage that no one will accept?
One other thought is you think about how many nonprofits out there are doing work to try to find employment for people who've come from, whatever, maybe it's reentry after being, incarcerated, whatever the situation is. And I'm assuming I'm making a lot of assumptions here, right? But I'm assuming there's probably not a whole litany of like requirements or qualifications for this position if it's $10 to $12 an hour. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can like partner and collaborate with some other nonprofits, right? And help them get, find employment for some of those they're serving and do it with your organization. Like, how cool would that be?
Nonprofit governance.
Nonprofit answers.
Nonprofit board. Nonprofit management.
Nonprofit marketing. Nonprofit resources.
The Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits presents Nonprofit Everything, the podcast about everything nonprofit, with your hosts, Andy Shurick and Stacey Wedding.
Welcome to another episode of Nonprofit Everything. I'm Andy Shurick. I'm here with my co-host Stacey Wedding, and we're here to answer all of your nonprofit questions. So the way the podcast works is that you send us questions. You either email them to us or send them via the Nonprofit Everything webpage. We have a phone number. You can tweet them at us. You can send them via Facebook, whatever you want. We'll take those questions, and Stacey and I will try to answer them. If we can't, we'll bring in a guest expert. So, for example, today we have a guest expert on a pretty interesting question. And the best way to support the podcast, other than sending us questions, is to become a member of the Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits. The Alliance for Nevada Nonprofits is the state association for nonprofits in Nevada. It's a great way to support the podcast, and there are an awful lot of good benefits that come along with being a member. And with that, we're going to jump right in.
Our organization recently had a cybersecurity breach caused by human error from one of our staff who clicked on a link and then opened an attachment they shouldn't have. We had a significant monetary loss as a result. What can we do to prevent something like this from happening in the future, especially in today's environment where this type of thing is happening to everybody? Is there insurance for this type of situation?
Oh, I'm sorry that happened. That really sucks.
It does suck.
And it's like, it is.
It's rampant.
Yeah. It's been in the news every single day this week, right? It is absolutely. And I actually got one of those emails, pretty targeted too, earlier this morning, right?
Yeah.
Didn't click on it because now I'm scared of everything.
Well, and just as a side note, I'm just going to share like a personal story, but like one that you have to be aware of. Like, in the past, I felt like it was really clear. Like you could look and be pretty clear. It was like something not to click on, right? Like it was
There's
danger,
like a spelling error,
right? Stranger
right?
danger. Like, but there was something. I the other day got something from someone, and I made the mistake and was on the phone with my tech company immediately. But I got something from a legitimate person, email correct and spelled correctly. The email message was very on point and something that I could have potentially expected. Like it felt a little strange I was getting it, but not strange enough that I wouldn't open it. Mm-hmm. And of course, like, the good news was I didn't keep clicking, but like I did click the one thing and then opened it and then saw we need your username and password for X to give you. And that was when I stopped, mm-hmm. but I was freaking out. And, this is the stuff that like, I just worry, like I worry about all of us, like any sector, but particularly nonprofits. I mean, we have got to get to the bottom of this. Yeah.
We don't have the resources to handle that. And just, I mean, I think you got lucky because the way a lot of them work now is that first click, you're done. Like there's no, some of them are like click something and it's like, give me your username and password. And that gives you another chance to like realize you've made a mistake. But a lot of them, that first click, like if it's a 0-day problem, you're done. You're done. So yeah, it's something you need to take seriously. We're gonna 100% bring in an expert on this because Stacey and I are clearly not experts on this. I would say to quickly answer the question, yeah, there is insurance for this. Like, so talk to your insurance broker, whoever is giving you your workers' comp, your business insurance, all the other your D&O, all the stuff that you're working with your insurance broker. Tell them that you're concerned about this and ask them about insurance because like all of the ones that were in the news today, like where someone has been shut down and they end up paying a ransom and the ransom is like always a weird number. Yeah. That's the insurance company paying that. That's not the company. That's the insurance. The rates are going to go up, right? Yeah. That's the insurance company paying them. The other thing the insurance company is going to be able to provide is resources. So the interest, once you've paid for the insurance, they want to make sure they don't want to have to pay out. And so they're going to provide free resources to you. And that's something you talk to your broker and say, hey, obviously we don't want to get a claim on this. Like, what do we need to do to make sure we don't get a claim on this? And they will put you in contact with people that can give you resources. Like, for example, one of the things, if you accept credit cards, a lot of times you have to do like a PCI compliance review. Where with payment card industry, where you go through a series of steps, ask you a bunch of questions like, are you saving credit card numbers? Those kinds of, do you have what's open on the internet? You have to go through that kind of thing. And they've got similar things for cybersecurity that can help you with some of these basic practices. I mean, that's not going to stop it. It's not going to prevent people from sending stuff to you. It's not going to solve the problem, but at least that's one resource that it's probably free since you're already paying for that insurance or once you are. So I'd take them up on that, but yeah, 100%.
It's like a risk management thing that we can't ignore anymore. And honestly, I'm always shocked that it doesn't come up more with some of the organizations I work with. Like, to me, that should be one of the top things when you're thinking about sort of threats like in your environment that you need to mitigate against. This should be top of the list. I mean, it could destroy.
It's easy to say, but just imagine. So what's going to happen is they're going to ask you for money, and they're going to say, if you don't give us the absurd amount of money that we're asking you for, we will just publish your donor list and all of their details of every donor that's ever given to you and how much they've given to you that you have, that we were able to scrape out of your database. Plus every contract you've ever signed with any of your employees and any private information that we can find on your clients. I mean, it could be catastrophic for a nonprofit. So it's something that you need to have, you need to think seriously about. And thanks for the question, because it gives us the opportunity to talk about it.
Hey everybody, Stacey Wedding here, and I have a special guest with us today, Frances Johnson, the Managing Director of Tech Services for Tech Impact. Welcome, Frances.
Thank you, Stacey.
Frances, who's got a lot of expertise working with technology and particularly helping nonprofits with their technology. He and his team really provide a lot of support across the country to nonprofits, and I'll let him share a little more about his background. So let's start with that, and then maybe I'll dive in. Frances, tell me a little bit about you and your role at Tech Impact.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the introduction. So yes, I am the Managing Director of Technology Services for an amazing organization called Tech Impact. At Tech Impact, our mission is to leverage the power of technology to better serve the world. And we do that in three main ways. As a capacity building organization, we provide technology services to other nonprofits across the United States. That could be anything from support with your data systems to cybersecurity and compliance advice and consulting. We also provide education and training for nonprofits and individuals to help them make smart technology decisions for their organizations and ultimately the mission that they're trying to achieve. And lastly, we also provide workforce development programs to opportunity youth to help them gain the knowledge and credentials they need to pursue a career in IT. And so those are the three main ways we go about trying to accomplish our mission in the world, so to speak. I work for Tech Impact because I've always loved technology. I went to school to further my studies in computer science, and I always knew I was going to be working in the technology space, specifically information technology space. And so I also love people and humanity, and I love the nonprofit sector. And so it just made sense for me to find something that had to do with the sector and all the great organizations that are providing such, life-changing services and programs to communities, across the world. So, I love what I do, and I try my best to come out every day to help, not just what we do here to impact and our mission, but the missions of all the organizations we interact with.
Well, we are so lucky to have you. And I'm sure all of our listeners are thinking, I need a Frances in my life. So we all could use some tech support from now and then. And what I really love about Tech Impact, for those who may not have heard, Tech Impact is a nonprofit themselves who is, in this capacity that Frances wears the hat for, is helping other nonprofits with some of their technology, support. So it's kind of a cool model. Anyone who doesn't know Tech Impact should definitely check them out. We'll make sure to put some links in the show notes to Tech Impact, to Frances, and you can get in touch with them if you're interested in learning more for your organization. With that said, though, we're going to dive right into our question, which is really, I think, hot on the mind of a lot of people, especially after what we've all been through over the last year and a half with having to really be more reliant on technology than we ever have before. And one of our listeners asked a question that sadly, I think is all too common. And here's the question. Our organization recently had a cybersecurity breach caused by human error from one of our staff who clicked on a link and then opened an attachment they shouldn't have. We had a significant monetary loss as a result. What can we do to prevent something like this from happening in the future, especially in today's environment where this type of thing is happening to everyone? Is there insurance for this type of situation? So, Francis, that's a big one, but I'm going to let you try to take a stab at it.
Oh, absolutely, sure. It's a very important question, and so I'll answer it a couple of ways. I'll start with what you can do as an organization. I think, and this really goes for any organization, right? I believe with a very complex problem, which is the constant attacks that these bad actors and cyber criminals are putting upon a lot of systems really across the world, it is important that every organization take a multiple angle approach to this problem, right? And I'll talk about two main things that you could do. I would call the first one essentially looking at your staff and the individuals that make up your organization and work to educate and train them, and basically give them what they need to deal with the fact that you are in a digital space. Most of the organizations we deal with have done the digital transformation and moved things to the cloud and are essentially doing a lot of things within that space. It's important to educate and equip your staff and individuals in the organization to actually be able to navigate this, right? It's hard enough dealing with as Stacey, you mentioned the pandemic and having to do remote work all of a sudden and things like that. It's hard enough to deal with that and also be very diligent with what you do and how you interface with things that come through your email, that pop up in your online systems, et cetera. So there are myriad of ways. There's a lot of this space, which is called basically the security awareness space, is pretty hot. There's a lot of resources around that. Essentially, there's a lot of training programs that you can have your staff go through with a lot of testing around that. Simulations, for example, let's just take into the question. They didn't say specifically email was the method in which they got breached, but it sounds like it was. It said there was a link and there was an attachment. So I'm just going to go off the fact that it might have been an email that came through. Somebody clicked on it and just kept on diving in. And so that things like a simulation of something like this to see who needs additional training, custom training. Essentially, again, as I said at the beginning, the whole point is to allow your staff members every possible resource they can get to be able to handle these things on their own if it does come to that. But that's not the only thing you should be doing. I think it's important to educate and equip the staff. But also, you can also do better with your systems as well. Like your email system, for example, you could add a few other things around security to really harden your email system. For example, let's just go back to the question. There was a link, there was an attachment. There are certain tools that you can layer onto any email system, frankly, that will scan, for example, a link or scan an attachment, that if they were to even go through the training and still fail to identify that this might be an email that they shouldn't be looking at or there's a link that they shouldn't be clicking on, they would, even in that point where they do click on the link, there would be essentially an interruption of that, right? There would be a warning or some type of alarm to let them know that this particular link has been scanned and it is going to a rogue website. You should not go further, or something to that effect, right? So just basically add in as many possible ways to deter and stop something like this from ever happening, all right? And so there's two different ways: education, as I said, and then tooling, for example, okay?
And Francis, can I stop you there for a quick second?
Sure.
So on the education piece, are there, when people are going, where do I even begin? Like, do I just Google, education on this? Do you have any recommendations or resources that you point your tech impact nonprofit clients to?
Yes, the particular company we use, they are called Know Before, as in know, as in before knowledge. So KNOW, B as in BE, and then the number 4. So they're pretty comprehensive in the different offerings they provide in their package of security awareness. As I mentioned, it can be a training just that everybody takes it once, and then that can then be customized for folks that need additional training. There's scenario-based training, and there's also, as I mentioned, simulation and testing of certain scenarios. For example, a rogue email, a rogue link, and just seeing how folks, your particular staff do after their training and how they react to things that come into their email, for example. So it goes through the whole thing. It's not just about training, it's also about testing and making sure that what has been trained and what has been provided to the staff is actually been taken in and understood, right? Because
I love that idea, because I'm sitting there just thinking it's kind of those real life scenarios that mess all of us up, right? And so that scenario training and those simulations and that kind of stuff, I mean, what a really powerful tool for organizations to use. That's super cool. I didn't even know that existed. So awesome. And then, you talk about layering on to, for example, an email system and additional tools you can layer on. I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about for our listeners, we have nonprofits of all sizes that listen to us, but budget, of course, is always a concern for nonprofits, particularly smaller ones. And so every time I'm hearing you talk about, training and layering on tools, it quickly, I'm seeing like the numbers and, add up as far as cost. And so, I mean, it's probably one of those things you can't afford not to invest in. And yet I'm just curious to know, are there some tools that work well, but are more affordable? Or are there some programs out there nonprofits can, go to, to kind of access technology at a reduced rate, or some of these tools?
Yeah, so there are quite a few vendors in the cybersecurity space that realize that what you just mentioned about tight budgets and affordability of these tools, and so there are quite a few that actually have been starting or have been doing a lot of things around donation programs and things like that. I would say, as you said, bottom line, I'm speaking through this, and it might make sense, but none of it is cheap or free, right? There's an investment there. There's investment of time, there's investment of effort, and obviously investment of funds. And I think ultimately, for the nonprofits that are listening, there's a few ways that I think. Well, number one, for every nonprofit and every organization that is in the digital space, right? And you all are somehow, some way, it's important to really put the fact that your technology and the protection of your technology should be part and parcel of what you do, right? So if it's not for example, if it's not something that you even budget for right now, it should be a line of your budget. It's something that you should push, right? This is something you should engage your board with. This is not something that is a luxury. It's not a luxury at all. This is a necessity. It's basically part of doing business in the digital space, right? It is part of what you do. Now, I say that also saying that, and I will say the other part of it too is we as a Tech Impact have worked with, as I mentioned, those vendors to help them understand what nonprofits need from what the nonprofits we interact with, so that the donation programs make sense and they can actually be used, and also working with funders, right? So ultimately, funders that provide grants can also provide grants around security and securing environments, right? So ultimately, we don't want to be in a space where we're funding specific programs and not funding everything that is on top of that, right? So it's essentially, with going back to the question, we are focused on our mission and we're focused on what we do per se. But it's important to also realize that the fact that you are now in a digital space or have been on a digital space is important to protect it, mainly because there's a lot of things that happen from a breach. For example, monetary loss. I think ultimately losing money and having disruption of your business and your organization's operation is very important. And I think funders are now realizing that and are being more amenable to actually provide funds around that. So looking pushing your board, pushing for funding around it is important. I think it's as I said, it's no longer something that's an afterthought. It's no longer something that you just don't really think about per se. It should just be part of what you do, right? You are running an organization. You have a lot of systems that are connected to the internet and are in the digital space. You should protect all of that and essentially ask for that funding, push for that funding, add it to your budgets, and get those things approved because it's part of doing what you do.
I think that's super sage advice. And I guess I'm also wondering, and does such a thing as like an assessment, technology assessment? I'm assuming such a thing is an opportunity for nonprofits. Maybe if they don't know where to begin, or if they want to hire somebody, I don't know if that's stuff that Tech Impact does or that other vendors do, but to come in and kind of just assess the landscape of their technology so they know where they're at risk, what they need, sort of look at the full organization and all of its moving parts and what they could do to sort of streamline, improve, secure, provide more security. Does something like this exist?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a lot. We do this, and essentially every cybersecurity solution provider does this, right? I believe every organization should do an assessment at least once a year, right? An assessment of your security space and really analyze your risk around that, right? And so, yeah, we provide security risk assessments. And as you said, it's the big picture of what you currently do, where you do it, how is it secured, and essentially analyze the gaps and provide you with a report with recommendations and timelines on how you can actually handle this. With Tech Impact, we take it a little bit further, as I mentioned, with the way we interact with vendors and also funders. We can actually also not just provide you with a menu of things that you have to do and all the costs per se. There's certain things that we know you can absolutely take advantage of in terms of donations and even cohorts and things like that can help you offset some of the costs, for example, because none of this is, again, a lot of it is everything I'm talking about here involves investment, not just of money, time, and effort. And so I know it just sounds daunting, and it's a big undertaking for nonprofits, especially ones that haven't really focused on this at all. And frankly, if you haven't, you should. And I think working with a provider like Tech Impact or any solution or provider to at least get that first part of it, which you just mentioned, which is a great recommendation, is to at least assess where you are, right? You need to know where you are so you know exactly where you need to go. You might not need all of the fancy things that are out there. You might just be fine with certain things that are really fundamental that you can put in place and protect your organization. But you have to assess where you are right now. You have to figure out your risk so that you can move forward.
And one final question, I'm thinking that some of our listeners may be wondering if it is a one-person or two-person nonprofit, which we know many grassroots and smaller nonprofits are teeny tiny. Absolutely. And, I can appreciate it as a very small business owner, but, is there a certain size where it makes more sense to engage in this type of investment? Do you have any recommendations about size? Or does it should it be starting from the very beginning, even with just one person?
As I mentioned, it should be part of what you do as an organization, right? As you lay out your organization, if you start from the bottom in terms of starting up with two people, it should just be part of what you do. Now, not every assessment is the same, right? It's not created the same, it's not delivered the same. And so obviously there are breaks there, so to speak, if you want to talk that way, where your assessment might not be as involved because you're not all over the place with your applications and your systems, et cetera. And so you might have a different size assessment than organizations that are 100 plus people, right? So yes, nothing I'm saying works across the board, but the fundamental pieces of what I was saying in terms of getting an assessment, getting your organization assessed, and actually getting the recommendations off of that. That piece, I think, happens across. You need to have it across the board. Doesn't matter what size you organization you are. Now, I think the nuance is in exactly how it's delivered and what actually comes out of it, so to speak. Yeah. But you have to start there. It's hard because if you think it's daunting enough to take the first step, taking it without actually understanding where you are is going to be exponentially more difficult, right? Because then you just get taken so many different directions, and then you end up spending so much more money than you did over engineering a system that you absolutely did not need to put so much investment in. So you kind of owe it to you and your organization to at least understand your current state and work to that future state with a provider, or if you have someone in the house that can help out with that.
This has been remarkably helpful, educational. I think I hope our listeners appreciate it as much as I do. Technology, for those of us who are not as well versed in it as you, Francis, can feel incredibly intimidating and overwhelming. I appreciate you just putting this in language all of us can understand. And my big takeaway is this is an investment. It's a line item that needs to just become an ongoing line item. And this is absolutely a necessity, not a luxury. And it's the world we live in today. So we all have to buck up.
We all have to buck up. That should be my new tagline. But absolutely, I appreciate you summarizing it that way. Again, if you think of it as a space that which you now work within, right? Your digital space. Ultimately, all I'm saying is that you should work to protect it, right? You didn't do all the hard work of getting into the cloud and moving your systems and going out and buying a new CRM, et cetera, or getting licensing for it just for you not to protect how it's used and who can actually access it. You have to. So protect your digital space is really what it comes down to.
Awesome. Well, Francis, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Absolutely. It was fun. I appreciate you, Stacey.
Sure. All right. Well, everybody, we are going to sign off for another one. But until next time, stay safe, stay well, and hope you're enjoying the summer. Take care, everybody.